Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I am Siddharth Bharadwaj. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Protests rock major Israeli cities, including outside Netanyahu's residence. Call on government to secure Gaza hostages' release. Protests also marked major cities across the world. US reaffirms support for humanitarian process in Gaza. Warns ceasefire would help Hamas to regroup. Pakistan stays alive in the race for the semi-final while England crashes out. Today, India takes on South Africa in a top-of-the-table clash in Kolkata's Eden Gardens. It's day 30 of the Israel-Hamas conflict. The action from both sides seems relentless, with protests gaining strength across Israeli major cities in support of the families of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Israelis, including families of October 7 victims, rallied in Tel Aviv on Saturday. Toys were displayed in the protest to symbolize the children who were being taken as hostages by Hamas militants, while hundreds waved Israeli flags and pictures of the missing. Israel says Hamas has taken over 240 hostages so far. Protests also took place outside the residence of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Waving blue and white Israeli flags, a crowd in the hundreds pushed through police barriers around Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem. The protest, which coincided with a poll showing more than three-quarters of Israelis believe Netanyahu should resign, underlined the growing public fury at the political and security leaders. And protests were also held in major cities across the world to demand the Gaza ceasefire and release of hostages. The central London, thousands of protesters were gathered to call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza amid ongoing conflict. It was the fourth consecutive week that the British capital was the venue for a large rally in support of Gazans since October 7. In Paris, thousands demonstrated to show solidarity for Gazans and to demand a ceasefire. Demonstrators held flags bearing slogans, "Stop the massacres" and "Ceasefire now." Around 19,000 people took part in the protest. The demonstration was one of the first big gatherings to be legally allowed in Paris since Hamas attacked Israel. French authorities had banned previous gatherings in Paris due to concerns of public disorder, but there has been increasing public anger around the world over civilian deaths. Major cities around the United States also saw large protests calling for an immediate ceasefire. Thousands of demonstrators gathered in Washington, D.C. amid the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. Crowds of protesters marched the streets, holding signs and waving flags demanding ceasefire in Gaza. Protesters voicing support for residents of the Gaza Strip gathered at rallies in more than 24 cities across Canada. Thousands of protesters filled the streets of Toronto and Ottawa, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Protesters also demanded Canada and its support for Israel's military action against Hamas. Canada's foreign minister reiterated a call for a humanitarian pause in the conflict in Gaza and said there's a little time left to get Canadians and hostages out while delivering badly needed aid. Let's listen into some of the reactions from the protesters.
I'm here to demand a ceasefire as a bare minimum to end the violent attacks by the State of Israel against innocent children and civilians in Gaza. A ceasefire is just a starting point. I think as artists we have the unique capacity to touch people in their spirit, and I think that's what we need right now.
Call for a ceasefire. We need to stop the suffering that's happening in Gaza, and all the children that have been, they're dying and being massacred and butchered and stuff like that. We just want to call them, just have a ceasefire. Let's stop this madness. That's what I'm saying.
Children, our daughters, while their daughters have accepted his family, his wife Shiri and 2 little boys. Ariel is 4 years old. Kfir is now 10 months old. We don't know where they are. We don't know what conditions they are kept in. I don't know if Kfir is getting food. I don't know if Ariel is getting enough food. He's a very small baby, small, 4 years old. And it should be stopped. It's a humanitarian situation, a war crime, and it should be stopped immediately. And we want the Red Cross to go inside, to check on them, to give us a list of the people there, to know if they're alive or dead, to know if they're okay.
The U.S. remains deeply committed to humanitarian efforts in the region, stepping up his frantic diplomacy. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met leaders from Lebanon, Qatar, Jordan, Egypt and Saudi in Amman as he pushed for humanitarian pauses in the fighting. The last meeting of the day was with Jordan King Abdullah II and Crown Prince Al Hussein, during which they discussed working towards facilitating the delivery of humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza. Earlier, Blinken attended an Arab foreign ministers roundtable meeting where he expressed deep commitment to working with partners in the region to help set the conditions necessary for a durable and sustainable peace in the Middle East. This was Blinken's second trip to the region since Israel-Hamas conflict began.
Israel has a right and indeed an obligation to defend itself and to try to take the steps necessary to ensure that what happened on October 7th never happens again. But equally, it is very important how Israel does this. And in particular, it's important to take every possible measure to protect civilians and to prevent harm to them, as well as to ensure that those who need assistance get it. And in our conversations with the Israeli government, including just yesterday, we have pointed to steps that they could and should take to minimize harm to civilians, to prevent civilian casualties. It's our view that a ceasefire now would simply leave Hamas in place, able to regroup and repeat what it did on October 7th.
Meanwhile, Antony Blinken will visit Turkey on Sunday, where he will remain until Monday afternoon. It is not yet clear who the U.S. Secretary of State will be meeting. Turkey on Saturday recalled its ambassador to Israel for consultations due to the humanitarian crisis and ongoing Israeli attacks in Gaza. Israel's envoys to Turkey left the country last month due to security reasons. Israel later said it had recalled its envoys to assess bilateral ties. Israeli Foreign Ministry called the decision to call ambassador back for consultations another step to side with terrorist organization Hamas. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has listed the top Hamas targets of Israeli defense forces and vowed to find and eliminate them. Speaking at a news conference in Tel Aviv, Gallant said that Israel had delivered a hard blow to Hamas brigades and destroyed critical military infrastructure.
Hamas brigades are getting hard blows and we dismantle infrastructure after infrastructure. We can see here the areas in Gaza. In each square there are infrastructure. These are falling apart as a result of the determined action of the fighters of the army. I can tell you that 12 Hamas commanders were killed. We will get to everyone from the chain of command to the terrorist in the field. We will get to Yehya Sinwar and we will assassinate him. I say here to the people of Gaza, if you get there first, it will shorten the war.
Israel's chief of the General Staff, Herzi Halevi, held an assessment with his forces inside Gaza Strip. A video released by the Israeli Defense Force shows Halevi meeting with the commander and other officers. Halevi visited the troops after they completed an encirclement of Gaza City. Israel's ground forces encircled Gaza City after stepping up a bombing campaign aimed at wiping out Hamas.
Keep everyone strong, strengthen the spirit. I know personally that it's very strong. I am really proud of people and I am really proud of you. Pass this to others, we will take and get updates. Well done.
Israeli warplanes pounded Hezbollah positions in Lebanon on Saturday in the worst border clashes for 17 years after the terrorist group unleashed a series of rockets into northern Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces said its plane had struck Hezbollah targets in retaliation for their attack and combined the air strikes with artillery and tanks shelling. Update now on Ukraine-Russia conflict. Ukraine's armed forces said they hit marine and port infrastructure at a factory in the port city of Kerch in Russian-occupied Crimea on Saturday. Ukraine fired 15 cruise missiles on Russia's shipyard in the Crimean port, damaging a ship. 13 of the missiles were destroyed in the air, while one hit a ship, the Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement when reporting on Ukraine's strikes on Russian territory or infrastructure. Ukraine's top Air Force commander said the Russian Navy stationed there one of its most modern ships, a carrier of the caliber cruise missile. Moscow has often attacked Ukraine in the course of the 20-month-long war with caliber missiles. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said on Saturday that Ukraine has made excellent progress towards EU accession, days ahead of a key report on Kyiv's membership bid. Standing next to the Ukrainian president, she said Ukraine had reached many milestones despite the war with Russia, highlighting Kyiv's judicial reforms. The EU assessment due on Wednesday is expected to say how far Ukraine has advanced in fulfilling various economic, legal and other criteria to clear the way for accession talks in December. The EU's 27 members are due at a summit in December to decide whether to allow Kyiv to begin accession negotiations, which would require unanimous backing.
I want to tell you how impressed we are by the reforms you've made in the midst of a war. You should never forget you are fighting an existential war, and at the same time you're deeply reforming your country. You have reached many milestones, reforming your justice system, curbing the oligarchs' grip, tackling money laundering, and much more. I know that you are in the process of completing outstanding reforms. If this happens, and I'm confident, Ukraine can reach its ambitious goal of moving to the next stage in the accession process.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky denied on Saturday that the war with Russia has reached a stalemate and said more work with allies was needed to strengthen air defenses. His comments come days after Ukraine's commander-in-chief says the conflict is moving towards a new stage of static and attritional fighting, a phase that could allow Moscow to rebuild its military power. Zelensky acknowledged there had been difficulties in the war, now in its 21st month, and that Kyiv had yet to achieve any major successes in its counteroffensive, adding that the Israel-Gaza war is taking away the focus from the conflict in Ukraine, accusing Russia of going forward with the invasion with the aim. And gearing up for important local elections in March 2024, Turkey's main opposition Republican People's Party elected Özgür Özel as its new leader. His candidacy will end the 13-year term for incumbent Kemal, who had come under fire since his election defeat for refusing to step down as the leader of the CHP. Amid threats of deportation, Venezuelan migrants who trekked through the dangerous Darien Gap to reach the U.S. are getting some respite with the help of Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese. The church is helping the migrants with their applications for work authorization and temporary protected status. India's most awaited festival, Diwali, also known as the Festival of Lights, was celebrated with joy and fervor by the Indian Embassy in Pakistan. The festival saw enthusiastic participation from diplomatic corps and other friends. Disguising themselves as the iconic Mexican skeleton figure La Catrina, or Elegant Skeleton, Mexicans participated in the parade celebrating the Day of the Dead. The idea for the parade originated from the opening scene of the movie Spectre, where Agent 007 chases the villain through the crowded Mexico City, hosting a similar event. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Survivors race against time in wake of the devastating earthquake in Nepal. India and Malaysia enhances operational capabilities in subconventional warfare environments. And Manchester City claimed the top spot in the Premier League once again. Stay tuned to know how.
always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life. Warm up to grandeur that's beyond compare. And history that's dotted with tales of bravery. Smiling soul of India, where music, art, cuisine and culture comes together to create an unforgettable impression. Punjab is all set to win your hearts with its unique and colorful extravaganza.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. The victims of the disastrous earthquake that shook Nepal in the middle of the night were being treated in a hospital in Kalanga, which is close to the epicenter of the quake in the country's western region, while other survivors slept outside amid damaged buildings. Military helicopters have also been deployed to the quake-stricken areas to save the seriously injured. The helicopters have been flying between the disaster area and the airport, transporting the injured for further treatment. The death toll has reached 257 now, and officials fear the death toll could rise as first responders had reached the hilly area near the epicenter and began searching for survivors. Meanwhile, Nepal Deputy Prime Minister Bahadur Khadka said the country has deployed its military forces to race against time to rescue all the injured.
First, we have to rescue all those injured people who are treated at local hospitals and clinics. Seriously injured people will be sent to other hospitals by 2 military helicopters, and 3 other small military helicopters will also participate in the rescue. In the initial stage, we will treat the injured in different hospitals in the region.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has kicked off a tour of Southeast Asia, starting with a visit to Malaysia. It's aimed at strengthening ties with countries in the region and to boost security cooperation with them. Patrick Folk reports.
His tour will also include a visit to the Philippines, and it's already about strengthening bilateral relations with these countries. And in particular, he wants to strengthen maritime security cooperation with Malaysia and the Philippines, and to reassure the Southeast Asian nations that Japan is ready to maintain peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, even as America's attention is very much focused on the Middle East right now. Reports have suggested that strengthening that security cooperation with Manila will be a much more straightforward affair than it will be to do so with Malaysia. It is welcomed by the Philippines in many ways, as it is embroiled in this intensifying dispute with Beijing over territories in the South China Sea. Malaysia, by contrast, according to reports, is somewhat skeptical about deepening any security alliance, and is skeptical also about Tokyo's official securities assistance program, which was passed in April and essentially offers like-minded countries the ability to purchase security and defense equipment from Japan. Notably, it was described by China's state-run Global Times as ominous. It also described Prime Minister Kishida's visit as trouble-provoking. But the visit does offer Malaysia an opportunity to strengthen relations with Tokyo, to act as a counterbalance to its relations with Beijing.
And in Bangladesh, a 48-hour countrywide blockade of road, rail and waterways began this morning. The blockade is enforced by Bangladesh Nationalist Party and like-minded opposition parties. Simultaneously, banned Bangladesh Jamaat-e-Islami is also enforcing a blockade demanding the current government's resignation and installation of a non-party neutral administration to oversee the 12th parliamentary election. Vehicles of the newspapers or media, ambulances and vehicles transporting oxygen cylinders and medicines will remain out of the purview of the 3-day blockade. Meanwhile, a dawn to dusk hartal will also be enforced by BNP on Sunday in protest against the arrest of party standing committee member Amir Khosru Mahmood Chaudhry. Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The Pravasi Parichai event in Riyadh saw an impressive display of India's rich cultural diversity during the State Days, a three-day extravaganza. Representatives from 12 Indian states came together to highlight their unique cultural heritages. The event also featured performances by the Gujarat group, featuring renditions of Garba and Madi, composed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The energetic Garba, Dandiya and Timli dances brought to life the festive spirit of Navratri and Diwali, leaving the audience mesmerized. India's High Commissioner to Canada, Sanjay Kumar Verma, reiterated New Delhi's stand on the diplomatic standoff with Canada and urged Ottawa to release evidence backing up its allegation regarding the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Verma stressed that India has not been shown concrete evidence by Canada or its allies about India's alleged involvement in Nijjar's killing. The Indian envoy made the remarks in an interview with a Canadian daily. Malaysian Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Zamri Abdul Qadir is visiting India from today. The visiting dignitary will co-chair the 6th India-Malaysia Joint Commission meeting with Indian counterpart Dr. S. Jaishankar during his two-day visit. The Joint Commission meeting will review the progress of enhanced strategic partnership with Malaysia in several areas. He will also call on the Indian Vice President. The visit will provide opportunity to comprehensively review bilateral relations and to explore ways to further deepen and strengthen them. Let's now take a look at other stories making news today. After the Kalamasarai bomb blast in Kerala, 54 cases were registered across the state for spreading fake messages and news through social media in a manner that fosters religious hatred and destroys communal harmony. Malappuram district in the state registered the highest number of 26 cases. The police have also identified many fake profiles who were spreading and sharing fake messages through various social media. A tiffin box timer-based improvised explosive device was found on the Narwal-Sidra bypass in Jammu on Saturday evening. The IED was defused by the squad as the traffic was suspended with immediate effect. Investigation is underway to arrest the suspects involved in the act. Indian Army and the Malaysian Army successfully concluded the joint guerrilla warfare military exercise Harimau Shakti 2023. The exercise was conducted at Foreign Training Node Umroi Cantonment, Meghalaya. The Indian Army troops engaged with Malaysian Army in a significant show of strength and joint manship and very effectively carried out various operations. Ahead of Diwali festival in India, potters are preparing eco-friendly earthen lamps. In Moradabad of Uttar Pradesh, potters and artists are making idols of God and earthen lamps with cow dung. They claim it is more efficient than other raw materials. After the use of these earthen lamps, these can be converted into the manure and can be used in farming. Well, India will take on South Africa in the ICC Cricket World Cup 2023 at the iconic Eden Gardens on Sunday. The men in blue have already qualified for the semi-final and will look to continue their momentum, whereas the Proteas will look to challenge the table toppers. DD India correspondent Narayan Singh reports.
For the El Clasico of cricket, as Sunday marks the clash of the titans in the ICC Cricket World Cup 2023. It's a face-off of epic proportions with India and South Africa squaring off at the iconic Eden Gardens in Kolkata. India, the undisputed juggernauts of the tournament, have been on a relentless winning spree. They have conquered all 7 of their matches, becoming the first team to secure a spot in the semi-finals.
This match is a perfect example of El Clasico of cricket. If we take a look at the points table, it's similar to that of the Real Madrid and Barcelona featuring in Spanish La Liga. If we take a look, India is playing more or less like Barcelona. The way Barcelona dominated with their technical tiki-taka, the European football, in the same way, India is playing an exceptional technical cricket and dominating and thrashing their all opponents. If you take a look at South Africa, they are more or less like Real Madrid, thrashing their all opponents who are coming on their way.
South Africa is on a mission to not only topple the cricketing giants, but also cement their own passage to the semi-finals. With an impressive 6 wins out of the 7 matches, they're hot on India's heels. Sure, they stumbled against the Netherlands in a shocking upset, but they have come back stronger, hungrier and more determined than ever. In the history books, India and South Africa have crossed paths in 90 ODIs, with the Proteas emerging victorious in 50 encounters and India securing 37 wins. In the crucible of the ODI World Cup, they have clashed 5 times, with South Africa holding the edge with 3 wins to India's 2.
If you take a look, both the teams on paper, both are strong. If India has Kohli and Rohit, then in batting department, South Africa has Klaasen and Quinton de Kock. But yet, there is no room for complacency, both the teams, because this match is not only played for the top of the table battle, but it is also for the battle of supremacy in the world of cricket. With camera person Senthil Kumar, Narayan Singh, DD India, Kolkata.
Manchester City bounced back to the top of the Premier League with 6-1 thrashing of Bournemouth. Jeremy Doku was the standout star, contributing a goal and 2 assists in a breathtaking first-half display. However, the win was marred by an injury to striker Erling Haaland, who did not return for the second half. Bruno Fernandes scored a late goal to secure Manchester United a much-needed 1-0 win against Fulham at Craven Cottage. In another Premier League match, Newcastle United handed Arsenal their first Premier League defeat of the season with a 1-0 win on Saturday, thanks to a controversial second-half goal by Anthony Gordon in 64th minute, firing past goalkeeper David Raya from close range after a goal-marked scramble. Newcastle, who are unbeaten in their last 7 league outings, climbed to 6th on 20 points after 11 games. Arsenal, who failed to score for the first time in all competitions this team, are third with 24, 3 behind leaders Manchester City. All right, and that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Prasar Bharati from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.